vision received was that of blood cells, traveling throughout the body, supplying the much-needed oxygen and other nutrients to the differing members of the body to fulfill their purpose. Once the blood cells are spent, they must return back to the heart to be refilled before being sent out again and fulfill their purpose. Hello, and welcome to our Father's Heart podcast. Hopefully you have been listening over the last few episodes and you would know that we are in the midst of a series entitled Topics for Young Adults. We're trying to address some topics that young adults that are in high school or are in college are grappling with as they kind of start their independent life outside of their family's home, and they're on their own, and things that are affecting them or are tempting them or are influencing them. And so we started out with piercings and tattoos. We went into music. And for the last two episodes, we went into relationships, courting, dating, leading to the ideal, which is marriage. Today's episode is going to be on divorce. And it's kind of a shorter episode than the previous ones, which has kind of bothered me for the last few weeks as I've been preparing these episodes for you all. And I just felt that there was more to say. And so I recently listened to a podcast that I thought had some very enlightening information that I want to start this particular episode and share with you that information. And then I kind of want to, I guess, get it on a personal level, and basically kind of share my experience, because I am the fruit of a divorced family. And I want to share with you some of those experiences. But before I do that, I would like to start with sharing what I heard recently. So I was listening to a podcast recently. The podcast by The Morning Wire, you can look it up. It was from October 15th, 2022. And it was talking about the happiness gap. It was talking about some other things, but it started with, at least the first 5 or 6 minutes, started with the happiness gap. And what that means is they were talking about surveys that were taken by the American family, or basically the American Family Survey, and what were some of the notable findings that they found concerning the connection between political ideology and happiness. Now, this podcast is not about politics, but sometimes we may, talk about politics or culture because it has such a kind of a powerful impact on our society and our paradigms of thought as a whole. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that this podcast particularly shared with me, because I thought they were very enlightening, and it really has to do with marriage. So it further on went in to say that those who identified as liberal were about 15 points less likely to be completely satisfied with their lives than their conservative counterparts. The happiness gap between the left and the right, that isn't new news. That has literally been going on for the last 50 years. 50 years they have been taking satisfaction surveys about our overall life. It started in about 1972, and over that period from 1972 to now, the right, or conservatives, has tended to be happier than the left, or the liberals. And this data and these surveys have been taken through diverse polling companies and the surveys that they conduct over the years. So that there really isn't a question as to the reality of this. This is just what has been recorded consistently through different polling companies, for the last 50 years. The explanation, the why, has been the ever-changing theory over the years. Sociologists have looked at this data, looked at these surveys, looked at all of these questions, and what are these numbers? What is the data showing them? And they try to explain, well, why are conservatives more happy? Well, is it this? Is it that? Is it the other? And some might say, well, it's the views on meritocracy. Conservatives have a strong view on meritocracy, and it's basically a system in which persons are rewarded in advance based upon their ability and or their talent. Some other explanations as well, conservatives are more religious leaning. They have strong religious beliefs, and there's definitely a strong correlation to happiness when you have religious beliefs. But the latest research that has come out has shown that there's some differences between men and women that may provide further insight in explaining the why. So I want to share some of that information with you. Both liberal men and women are less happy than their conservative complements. That's been the running narrative based upon these surveys over the last 50 years. That's really unquestioned. But what was found out more recently, as they delve deeper into it, is that liberal women are much less happy. I mean, significantly less happy. And they looked at the measures of mental health, and they found that the liberal women scored 20 points lower than women on the right. That's pretty significant. 20 percentage points less than women on the right. And so this podcast interviewed a particular sociologist from the University of Virginia. His name is Brad Wilcox. And he gave this explanation that it basically comes down to two areas. And specifically, there are two family factors. They are being married and being satisfied with your family. And he looked at, in his explanation, is that only 36% of liberal women say they are, quote, completely satisfied with their families. Now, you compare that with conservative women, and conservative women are showing a 62% completely satisfied record. There's no other gap in family satisfactions as large as this one. That's tremendously significant. There's only 36% of liberal women that say that they're completely satisfied with their families, compared with 62% of conservative women. Also, conservatives are 26% more likely to be married than liberals, and they are more likely to have children. It is also known that parents show themselves are more are happier than non-parents. That's been found in the data over the years. He noted modern progressives are statistically less inclined toward traditional marriage and family. He notes that the question of marriage and family, they do affect men's happiness. They do affect men's mental health as well, but not as much as it affects women. And this is where the greater disparity lies. So he noted left-leaning women are immensely affecting these scores that make the overall comparison between conservatives and liberals very significant and disproportionate as they are. With over 50 years of data, it appears that happiness divide has dovetailed loosely with marriage rates during the same time. So as the gap in marriage has been growing, well, so has the happiness divide. And so Wilcox says that, the problem for progressive is that they're not partaking of the benefits of having a spouse, the benefits of living a family-centered lifestyle, because a lot of the values and virtues that they embrace don't point them directly in the direction of families. Now, that's a quote. So the other question was, why does it appear that religion is so important? Well, religious faith tends to promote marriage. It tends to promote family. And as I said before, religion or religious beliefs has always correlated with happiness. And it didn't matter whether your religious beliefs were Protestant or Catholic or Jewish or Muslim or Pentecostal or whatever religion out there. If you had it, a particular religion that you abided in, it usually correlated with greater happiness. So that's basically what the podcast was sharing, just some of the data and some of the surveys and what's being talked about now as to why is there's this disparity between conservatives being happy and liberals being happy. And so I look at all of that data and I think about this podcast that we were trying to release, and I observe, or I kind of detect that the greater number of broken families in our society results in the greater risk of the deterioration of that society. And when families are broken in a society, it basically weakens the nation as a whole. I've been taught for numbers of years that families are the foundational building block of all human societies. Now, that's what the podcast shared. I want to make this personal because I was raised up in a broken family. If you've listened to the podcast recently, you probably already know that. I've shared that in different podcasts, different testimonies that we've had over the course of our episodes, and you can review those. But I have to go back to it, and I have to kind of share my thoughts and insights on marriage, before we share this segment on divorce. So my personal experiences and thoughts are basically attributed, I feel, to the result of my parents' divorce and what I experienced. For me, I believe that because my parents divorced and my dad lived separate from me in New York State and I lived in Florida, my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and that's where I kind of didn't see my dad for several years. I think I started seeing him around 7 years old. I would visit him in the summers. First time I went to visit him was only for 2 weeks because my mom was not keen on me going on an airplane by myself and visiting my dad. And so over the years, as I continued visiting him over the summer, I guess she got more comfortable. And so I got to stay longer. So that 2 weeks expanded to maybe a couple more weeks. And then eventually it became the whole summer. And I thoroughly looked forward to those times. Not that I disliked my mother. I loved my mother. I loved Mom. But I missed my dad. I really, really missed my dad. It was a hole that would only get filled by visiting him in the summer. But one of the results of being raised up in a broken family is that I did not have a suitable, consistent, regular father figure in my life on a day-to-day basis. If I only saw my dad in the summers, and again, it only started with 2 weeks out of the year. That means for 50 weeks I was with my mom. It's not that I disliked my mom, but not having my father, my dad, in my life on a day-to-day basis resulted in some fruits in my life that I think that if my dad were around, I would not have experienced many of the things that I did. So I want to share with you some of those things. Because I lived with my mom for most of the year, like I said, about 50 weeks, reduced down to maybe 48, 46, because I went to see my dad for 2 months. My mom had other husbands over the years and boyfriends over the years. And they were absolutely abysmal role models. Absolutely. I'll start with her second husband. I know his name. I've never forgotten his name. He was a Panamanian. Not that Panamanians are bad, but he just, particularly in this instance, was a Panamanian. And I believe because of his influence in my life and being my mother's second husband, obviously a lot of times children will have, I guess, sort of resentment, especially if they still know their father. They'll have some sort of resentment for the new guy, the new dad. But I don't believe that's why he was an abysmal role model. But I believe because of this second husband that I developed a deep resentment of bitterness and distrust for men, specifically for men who were either married to my mom or boyfriends of my mom. Why? It wasn't initial. It wasn't natural. I mean, there may have been some initial because he's not really my dad. But I mean, I was very young. When my mom got married to her second husband, I was probably, it was definitely between kindergarten and second grade. And that's when they got married, or it was like maybe third grade because we moved. See, I know because I know where I was, where I lived based upon my grade. So for kindergarten, first and second grade, I was in Tampa. And then for third, fourth, and fifth grade and all the way through high school and college, I was in Miami. So I remember not my age. I remember what grade I was in when some of these things happened. So I was in Tampa when what I'm about to share happened. And in Tampa, that was my kindergarten, first and second grade year. And I can honestly tell you that I was exposed at a very early age to sexual occurrences. Think about that. Think about how old you are as a kindergartner, as a first grader, as a second grader. How old is that? We're talking about 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. I was exposed to things I should have never been exposed to. I was exposed to nudity, live sexual activity. As a kindergartner, first, second grader, I can't imagine that my own children would have been exposed to that. It's something that I really, really worked hard at trying to shield them from any type of unnecessary exposure to that type of topic. Until obviously they were mature and they were ready and it was necessary. But to expose a child to nudity, to live sexual activity at such a young age can do a number on that child and their development and their maturity. Being in Tampa, I remember that this second husband, or maybe it may have been a boyfriend at the time because I can't really remember when they got married. I just know that they eventually did get married. I know that he brought into the house Playboy magazines, Penthouse magazines, Hustler magazines. I can't remember which one of the three they were, but they were those type of magazines. They were in our house. And the reason why I remember it so vividly because a lot of times my uncles, who were very young, they were maybe 5 years, 6 years, a little bit older than me, and my cousins would come to our house in Tampa and they would spend like the weekend over at our house. And I remember when my mom and her husband were not around that they found those magazines. They were in some sort of, a little dresser drawer in our living room. And they were looking at the magazines and they were enjoying it as youth would enjoy that type of thing. And I wasn't. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I wasn't even looking at them, but I knew that they were. And they kind of chided me. They kind of looked down on me. They kind of made fun of me because I wasn't looking into the magazines. I was kind of hiding away behind the couch, trying to find something to play with. And they were just all around laughing it up and looking at all the magazines. And that's not something you do to young children. But I didn't have my real father, my real dad there. And so because of these experiences, I think back, I think about who my dad is, who my dad was. And I'm pretty confident that my dad would not have allowed that in my life. And it's not like he was a Christian either. Don't get me wrong. But he was not that type of person that would expose me to that stuff. And it's not that my mom exposed me on purpose to that, but being that he wasn't my dad, her second husband, I don't think he cared very much about me or what I might be exposed to because, I'm not really his son. But nevertheless, between kindergarten, first and second grade, again, I was exposed to nudity, live sexual activity, and I won't go any further into that, but I was also exposed to Penthouse, Playboy, and Hustler type of magazines. And the second thing that this second husband exposed me to was I was exposed to domestic violence between third and fifth grade. I was not the victim of that violence, but my mom was. And I remember, and I think I've shared this in a previous episode as I shared my testimony with others, that I remember we lived in a trailer park. It was a lot of French Canadians were living there, and he was kind of the person that took care of the trailer park, and we lived in the particular house on the lot. And he was having a fight with my mom, or my mom was having a fight with him. And I guess it began to get physical. And I was so young at the time. Think of it. I was a third grader at the very least. And I did not feel powerful enough, strong enough to confront him, to protect my mom. I remember being outside that house, right outside the window, and listening to them arguing and fighting and listening to the noises that were taking place. And I was outside alone, so angry, so I wanted to protect my mom. And I was just so young and felt helpless, felt like I couldn't do anything. And that resulted in my mom being in a sling. I don't know what he did to her specifically. I know there were bruises on her arm. He may have twisted her arm or, done something that messed up her elbow or her shoulder. I'm not even sure what. I just know she was in a sling. And that was kind of the beginning of that exposure to domestic violence. But that was between my third and fifth grade year. And this relationship with this person ended in divorce because a couple of years later, we had moved from that trailer park. We had moved to a better place in town in Miami. And one night, from what I understand, from what I could kind of gather in my young fifth grade understanding, maybe I was 11, not sure how old I was. He became very angry with her. She was coming home, I guess, from shopping, which was right across the street. And he was accusing her of, I guess, cheating on her with, I don't even know how. She was shopping for food or something. And I wasn't in the house at the time, but after everything was done, we then left the house to go to her friend's house for protection because she didn't feel safe at home. And I was overhearing her conversations telling her friend what he had done to her. She had a black eye. She had bruises and wounds. And from what I heard, he did stuff to her. And so I was exposed to that at an early age. After that, they got divorced. And so now I'm talking about between fifth and eighth grade. Well, she had boyfriends. And I was exposed during that period of time, regularly exposed to alcohol use, drug use at home, and with extended family on my mother's side. Now, usually, I mean, sometimes my family might have come over, but more of the time I was going over to where my uncles and cousins were. She always took me to my uncles and cousins on the weekends. I would end up staying over there for like Friday night, Saturday night. And then I guess she would have time with her boyfriends alone without me. I guess that's kind of how it worked. So I stayed with my family, but you know, where my family was at, they lived in Section 8 housing. Many of them were on welfare. Many of them were on food stamps. And so I was exposed to things there that I shouldn't have been exposed to. With my mother's boyfriends, there was attempted sexual abuse toward me. And I, again, was exposed to nudity with those that were under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And that was with my mom and whoever she was with. So eventually, you know, boyfriends came and go. There were several. I remember their names. I remember the influence that they had on me. And never of them were really any good. And so that's why I say that there was never like a really good stepfather that could have been a good role model for me. But my mom, between 8th and 8th grade and my first 2 years of college, she met a man who she eventually married. And that's how I got my only sister, in 1990. But, you know, they were in a relationship beforehand. And I had issues with him because of all of the other issues that I experienced in the past with different boyfriends. I kind of didn't trust him, didn't like him. But eventually I got a sister out of it. And, but through those years that she was with her last husband, there was still exposure to alcohol and drug use. With him, I felt like I was left out of the family or pushed out of the family. And there were things that I kind of were exposed to then that weren't good. And so that's kind of the experiences that I've had living up and being raised up in a broken family. And that doesn't deter or take away from the fact that I loved my mom and that my mom loved me and she did the very best that she could. But sometimes the very best that she could was not really good for me. And as a result, my mom died at the ripe young age of 40 years old. And at the time, I was at the riper young age of 20 years old. So for me, looking back on all that I've experienced in my life and my youth up to that time, I believe I experienced all of that because I really didn't have a solid everyday father figure in my life. My dad was not there. He was in up the East Coast on the north side of the United States, and I was on the south side on the East Coast of the United States. And there's only so much of an influence that he can have on me, especially since I only saw him 2 months out of the year. And I miss my mom. I think what I miss most about her is making her smile, making her laugh. Trying to, tell her jokes and I was that kind of person that would, try to bother my mom, but I wasn't being mean. I was just, trying to love on her in a way that kind of would make her laugh, make her smile, joking with her. I can even tell you some responses that she had toward me that were not very vulgar. I mean, they were kind of vulgar, but because of the way that she was doing it and how she sang me a response that was kind of vulgar, it was just endearment. It was just her way of showing affection and showing that, I'm amusing her to some extent. But what I long most about her not being alive is that she didn't get to meet her grandkids. And I think I don't believe in what ifs. I'm a very, the way that things happen was the way that they were supposed to happen. I don't believe that there's like multiverses, which is very popular nowadays. I don't believe in that stuff, but at the same time, God gave us an imagination, and I just believe that if things were different, if my mom and dad had stayed together, I don't think a lot of that stuff that I just shared with you would have hit me as it did. I may have been exposed to other things. That's a possibility as well. But nevertheless, I think because I was raised in a broken family that there was a lot of bad fruit out of it. There's just no way to beat around that. And so, after my mom died, I've shared this in other podcasts, the Lord really, really started getting a hold of my attention. He had a bit of it, but not where it needed to be. And the best thing the Lord did for me, aside from baptizing me in His Spirit, was to restore my life in marriage and family. I have a faithful and virtuous wife. We have been happily married and together for over 24 years. And over the course of that time, we have had 3 wonderful children. And there truly is a foundation of authentic, common faith. There is a genuine, sincere love for the Lord and for one another. Which isn't to say that we have not had any turmoil and extremely challenging situations, but I believe we are still here. We are still enjoying life with each other because Jesus has kept us by His grace. In spite of our own weaknesses, in spite of our own failures, in spite of our own sin, and in spite of all the things that the enemy tried to expose us to early on to abort the plans that God had for me, for my wife, for my children. We're not survivors, we're overcomers. We have up to this point have overcome in Jesus every obstacle that has been set before us, and our trust and our faith in Him has only grown stronger and stronger and stronger. We have gone from faith to faith, from glory to glory, which is not to say we did not have our valley experiences, because we definitely did. But there's so much to be thankful for, because He is a God of restoration. And so I want to share with you a song that our family sang together. And I was thinking about this as I was kind of getting these thoughts down on paper that I think would go well to end this segment before we get into the divorce segment of the podcast. And the title of it is called Restoration.
take my sadness and turn it into joy. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing. You take my weeping, turn it into laughing. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing.
My soul.
You take my sadness, turn it into joy. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing. You take my weeping, turn it into laughing. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing.
My soul.
You take my sadness, turn it into joy. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing. You take my weeping, turn it into laughing. You take my mourning, turn it into dancing.
My soul.
You take my sadness, turn it into joy.
Said you bring restoration. Oh, you bring restoration to my soul. Oh, you bring restoration. Said you bring restoration. Would you bring restoration to my soul?
Our next topic. I think it was I think it was divorce and remarriage or something. Was it divorce and remarriage?
Divorce is there, not remarriage.
Oh, okay. So it's just divorce.
Yeah.
Okay, so divorce. Sorry about that. So what do we? Oh, okay. I see why. Yeah. Did you have anything to share on that? Divorce.
God hates it.
God hates it. Yeah.
That's pretty succinct. Yeah.
There's so much damage involved to both parties, and then God forbid they have children, to the children also. I think of when Jesus was talking and the Pharisees were asking, or was the Sadducees? Asking, what happens in terms of divorce? Why did Moses allow this? And
Yes.
Jesus says,
That was in Mark 10.
because of the hardness of your heart.
That's right.
That's why. But it wasn't supposed to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
The intention was supposed to be the one man and the one woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it was. It came and created a covenant agreement, and that was supposed to be upheld. And so you wouldn't divorce your wife just because she burnt your food. Like, that's not, you don't do that. And that divorce was set aside in the breaking of covenants.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, it was still a bad thing. That divorce was not supposed to be like this.
Right.
Oh, one and done, that's it. They broke the covenant. That wasn't God's intention for man and woman.
Right. And for those of you that are listening, you can read Mark chapter 10, 1 through 12. It's also spoken of briefly in Matthew 5, 31 and 32. I think one of the things that, and I'm glad you made mention, I think it was your second point, divorce can be catastrophically traumatic to a family.
Mm-hmm.
Every single person involved, especially with the children. And, they sometimes say, well, children are really resilient, they'll adapt and all of that stuff. And that's true. They are extremely adaptable, they're extremely resilient, but unlike adults, children cope in ways that are very immature and very not healthy for them because they don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it seems like they're resilient and it seems like they're adapting, and I come from a divorced family. where my mom left my dad when I was about 4 years old, and they got divorced. He tried to maintain the relationship with me. And I think as best as he could, being in New York and I was in Florida, he did a really good job of doing that. But it still took its toll on me. And I shared that on a previous podcast and a previous testimony. It's just terribly, terribly difficult. And then, when my mom had her relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship, and I'm not exaggerating, that messes with you. That could, any other person, it could taught them that, oh, that's the way life should be. Mm-hmm. It didn't for me because I was going in Christian schools, and so I was taught better, but there's so many broken families that are in the kingdom of God, yet God is able to redeem and restore in ways that you can't imagine. But he's really able to do that. So yes, divorce is something that man made up to kind of get an escape clause. It's like a natural fleshly effort to get out of something, like Abraham, go ahead and sleep with what's her name, Hagar, to get this promise fulfilled. It's like no, but he allowed that, but it's not like he sanctioned and said, kind of like when God wanted to be supreme authority over the children of Israel. And then with Samuel, what did the children of Israel choose?
We want a king.
No, we want a king. He allowed it. That wasn't his intention. Mm-hmm. I wanted you to listen from me directly, not go through a king, not be like the rest of the nations around you. That was not the intention. So no, divorce is not sanctioned by God, but it happens. We understand it. We recognize it. We all live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen society, and it's going to happen. But within the kingdom of God, it should not be happening, especially if both of them are being led of the Spirit of God. Now, it does say in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, I think you mentioned that earlier about, there's going to be some unequal unions. There's going to be one spouse that is a Christian. There's going to be one spouse that is not a Christian. And just because after you both got married, one of you became born again, that doesn't mean, oh, I got an escape clause, I can get out of this. No, sorry. You made a covenant with them, whether you knew me or not, and you need to stick with them because you are going to be not the person that saves them, because the scriptures that say, don't think that you're supposed to save them, but you're going to be able to communicate in a more direct manner your God to them. The woman, meek, chaste behavior, trying to implore, and then the man as well. If you were the one born again and she's not, man, you could be the Jesus to her that she never knew. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so there's a great responsibility in that. So there's not a quick get out of jail pass for you in that respect. Does anybody have any other thoughts on divorce?
Well, I can share. You don't mind if I share?
I don't mind.
Okay.
You were the one that was doing this to me.
Well, okay. That's because.
What does that mean for our listeners? I'm just kidding.
So I, when someone started ministering to me about God, I was in a previous marriage. That person left me, and that was my crisis that brought me to the Lord. And in the midst of that, and I would say I was pretty carnal. Like, I wouldn't be like super holy or anything, but the Lord had already been calling me because there were things that I said and I wanted that most Christians told me, well, no, the Bible says that, if you're unequally yoked, all that. So in my heart, I prayed that God would restore for a long time. And it didn't happen. But I tell people that in that time, the Lord upheld me. I learned how to do spiritual warfare like nobody's business. Like, I was thrown into that realm of praising and doing Jericho marches, all that. I did. But I believe that the Lord was teaching me things in the middle of it and also keeping me and preserving me. Because I had to take a stand against the Christian world. A lot of people that I fellowshipped with were telling me, no, this, he already sinned, he's disqualified, and I said, I am not going to take that step. So eventually, over a period of time, probably 3 years, because he moved in with another woman and everything, but it took not long for him to finally divorce me. And it was really when I said, I'm not going to let you just keep coming in and out of my life, because that's not what God wants from me. I'm selling myself short. So I believe that I struggled with it, because then I thought, well, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to have to be single. And then the Lord gave me that prophecy that he was going to put me into marriage. And there was something with the previous relationship, I don't even think I've told you this, that I was thinking about it the other day. I was not a Christian, but we would be talking about, well, if you left me or I left you, and, you know, what would you find? And the person told me, I think I'm going to find that you're going to be super blessed and you're going to be living in Georgia. Which I was in Dallas. So it's like,
What?
I'm just like, I know. And I was thinking about that.
Hold on a second. This is the first I've
I know.
ever heard
Oh,
of
my
this.
God.
I need names.
Because
I don't know who you're talking about because I feel like I got lost. Who are you talking about?
my ex-husband, honey.
Okay, so you were
He
having a
said-
conversation with
Yeah,
him
Yeah. I mean, it was like,
about splitting up
yeah.
before you were having problems.
Well, no, I think we were heading into the splitting up, and I was trying to lightly banter. You know how you do when you're trying to cope with something. And he's like, I was saying, you're going to be jet setting, because he was like really big into the, you know, the
He was
name-
bougie.
Bougie, very.
That
And
word we were using earlier.
And he said, no, you're going to be in Georgia. You're going to be established and you're going to be blessed. And I thought about it, and I thought, I don't know what I thought, but the other day I was walking, and the Lord reminded me of this, and I'm like, Lord, you were telling me this a long time ago. And I mean, it's weird. It really
That's
is
weird.
weird.
Yeah, that is
Especially
weird.
the story.
I agree. I've never heard this story
But
before.
it's like the Lord reminded me, and it's like, that's exactly what my life is. I mean, I'm not like in a mansion with a jet, or
Yeah, you're not jet setting.
I'm not jet setting.
That's true.
But I'm blessed. I'm in an
That's
established family, and I'm in a house, and I mean, there's just so many things, honey, our testimony of so many things that would not see myself in Georgia ever, and then here I am in Georgia. So I don't know.
Wow.
It's really interesting how God reminds you of something from way back. Something
I get that. He reminds you of stuff.
Yeah, like it was like, because one thing when I started coming to the Lord, and I was so broken, y'all. I mean, I had several pastors say that, I had a big jar, because he stores every tear in a bottle. They're like, no, ma'am, you've got a big jar up there, because I'd just be like, I was just like crying all the time. I would go up to the front, and it's snot and gross, disgusting, and just always crying. Every altar call, every prayer, every Bible study, everything. I was a wreck because I just was overwhelmed with God's goodness in the midst of all the suffering that I was going through. There were times when he would show me when I didn't know him, when I was a little kid, when I was struggling, when things were going on, when I was crying.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him there, like in a memory that he was there. And that blew my mind. The Lord was always with me, is what he was showing me. From the day you were born, from the day you were in your mother's womb.
Mm-hmm.
He showed me that. And I know that was the only vision I've ever had in my whole life was in church. I was going to the front to an altar call, and I saw Jesus holding me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was holding me like a mom holds, like this. I was laying on, and he was holding me. And I just remember I cried. But it was like, it broke me. A lot of things were that day, somebody prayed for me, and a lot of things were broken up. But yeah, so there's redemption. There is redemption. The Lord reminded me also of Abigail. She was married to a very foolish man.
Nathan.
Oh, yeah.
She went to plead his cause so that God would destroy all of David wouldn't come and destroy all of them. And then he dropped dead. To the Lord, so I had to reckon with that. And I think Jay shared with me, or we talked in a Bible study, that when you're married and you're not in the faith, there isn't that covenant. It is a covenant, but it's not. So it's like the person is dead because they're dead to God. kind of deal. It's not that I had to do all that rationale, but I really struggled with that topic a few times, especially when my kids brought it up, because they were wondering, well, Mom, the Bible says, and it's like, okay, are you going to talk about that? No, about what? You don't remember that conversation where you were charged? You were asking me a lot of questions about. Wait a minute, you're divorced? Oh, because I had to tell them I was divorced because we were going to go to Dominican Republic, and a lot of people over there were possibly going to say something to my kids. And I'm like, nope, I want them to hear it from me, and we're going to have a conversation. So they have a big questions.
Yeah, that was the wait, what? Moment for the kids.
It was. It was awkward to say the least. But anyway. I talked more than I meant to.
That's all right.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thus is the ministry of our Father's heart through us. Our utmost desire is to be in the Father's heart, to know the Father's heart, and express the Father's heart to you. If you appreciate listening to this podcast and were blessed, pass it along to someone else by text, email, or word of mouth in the hopes that they might be positively impacted as you were. If you are interested in supporting our efforts, we would ask you to consider the following. 1, pray for us. 2, leave a positive rating or review with whomever you listen to our podcast with. And 3, if you desire to contribute monetarily, you can do so at paypal.me/JBenJesus or Cash App $JBenJesus or Venmo JBenJesus. That's JBenJesus. God bless.